what you're all here for, our panel. So I'm going to pass it over, starting with Chris, to have each of our panelists introduce themselves to you and share what are they experiencing on campus this week. So Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much, Spencer, and thanks everyone for being here today. Again, Christopher Silva, Director of Housing at American University. My gender pronouns are he, him, his. And here at American University, we are close to the end of our, what we call the mid-semester residential experience. So for the remainder of the school year, for the past of the school year, we really had no students living on campus except for a couple of hundred students. But we decided to bring nearly 600 students back in past spring break, after spring break. And so we have a larger student population than we've ever had this year, and are working through those processes of checkout and supporting them during finals. In terms of the long range planning, I can tell you that things have really shifted a good amount given the increased vaccination numbers and the availability of the vaccine to future incoming students. And so we've been every day adjusting little by little aspects related to our fall move-in. And so we are working through that right now, and also creating some contingency plans that relate to that fall move-in, given that DC, last year and throughout most of the school year was a very, I would say, it took a very conservative approach and a very safe approach to reopening the city and reopening the campuses. And so we're looking at those right now and ensuring that we can plan for the very positive, hopefully safe outcome of bringing all the students back in the fall, but also with some outcomes of contingency of should there be other health and safety concerns, variants, and their impact to our campus. So that's a little bit about what's happening at American. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Vika.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Vika Bell Robinson. I'm the Director of Residence Life at Miami University. We typically house around 8,000, a little bit over 8,000 students. We're at about just under 5,000 this semester. The prompt is, what are we doing this week? And I will tell you, honestly, this week feels pretty traditional in terms of prepping for the end of the year. We closed the halls on May 14th, so we're still a few weeks out from that, but we are, getting ready for the virtual RA banquet, and we are writing letters of recommendation and making sure people have graduation cords and doing evaluations, all of those things that you would typically find in a traditional year. All of those things welcomed, because last year, of course, we didn't really get to do any of those things. Everything is still pretty virtual for us on our campus, but we are doing a lot of those traditional things. Today, I was in a meeting about exit testing and about how because what we learned in the fall is that lots of students were interested in getting tested before they left campus so that they could go to their home communities and not worry about taking COVID with them. So we were able to secure, and for those of you listening from Ohio, the state of Ohio has about 2 million kits that students can use to self-test so that they can have a knowledge about their COVID, the word I'm looking for is status, their COVID status before they go home. And so I was in a meeting about that today. And so I guess that is a symbol about where we are at the end of the year. We are we'll be slowing our testing or to a stop a week before final. So the 7th of May is when we're gonna stop our required testing protocol. And we expect that we'll be closing halls. So that's where we're at. That's what we're thinking about right now. I'll pass it to Dan.
Thank you, Vika. Good afternoon. I'm Dan Pedersen. I'm happy to serve as the Director of Housing and Residential Services at Northern Illinois University. And apparently, for many of you, that you're surprised I'm wearing short sleeves today and some private messages. So we're not getting as much snow as the rest of the Midwest is right now. Northern Illinois is about 11 days from ending the spring term. So we are very close to calling it a semester, and I think it was a successful semester. And a lot of our time right now are divided into 3 buckets. We're doing a lot of the engagement farewell pieces that Vika talked about. Most of it is being done virtually. We've tried to do a few face-to-face activities for traditional purposes, but they just didn't happen because we've also still been dealing on a daily basis with responding to COVID. So our positivity rates through surveillance testing over the last 3 weeks have been around 2%. So we saw a resurgence in the month of April, and it looks like it's going to be that way for us all the way through finals week. And so also trying to come up with some ways to prepare some of our students who won't be able to depart when finals are over, and can we safely house them until they're out of their quarantine or isolation period, keep them fed, keep them safe, and then transition them back home safely. And then the third part that has really been consuming a lot of time over the last 4 or 5 days is a lot of our proactive work and our reactive planning on racial and social justice issues, as we all are sitting on the edge of our seats waiting for the Chauvin trial verdict to be announced. And so we are trying to find ways to actively support and engage our students and create some healing conversations ahead of the announcement, and then also trying to prepare for what some of the outcomes might be and how will we respond as a campus. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Saldana. I'm Director of Residence Life and Housing Services at Mount St. Mary's University, Los Angeles. Currently on our docket is we close May 8th, so we're in preparation for closing, student appreciation nights, finals week, similar to Dan, identifying what resources are we going to be able to provide to students as we await the results of the trial, knowing that we're in a metropolitan area that will be impacted if protests do occur within our downtown LA campus. But summer planning, we were recently approved for vaccine distribution at our campus, so awaiting for the vaccines to arrive and then determining how those will be administered. So it's closing for us, and that's what we're waiting for. And we're in the early stages of our student position recruitment, our community advisor position. So we're in the middle of interviews as we prepare for finals and closing.
And I will wrap this up. I am Kendra Skinner. I am the Director of Residence Life at Southeast Missouri State University in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And like the others, we are anxiously awaiting the end of the semester. We're about 3.5 weeks away, just like Vika, and looking forward to that. And I will echo Vika's comments that it kind of feels a little normal. We have done probably a little bit more normal operations throughout the entire year here than many other campus have had the opportunity to do. We have about 2,100 students living on campus and have been very successful with that this year and haven't had huge outbreaks in the residence halls. So we're thankful for that. I don't believe we have anyone in quarantine or isolation housing right now. Our numbers in the community are very, very low. So we're very thankful for that and have been able to focus on a lot of other things. So we're in the midst of room assignments, just like everyone else. We are, I actually am in the middle of a couple of searches. We have a hall director search going on and a senior administrative assistant search that we are doing right now. So that's thankful distractions for us. We're planning an in-person RA banquet that we didn't get to do last year. So we're super excited about that. And the opportunity to finally be able to bring our entire staff together because we have not been able to do that at all this year. So looking forward to that. And then just like everyone else, planning and what are things going to look like for us this coming summer, this next school year, and where things go from there. So anxious to hear what everyone needs to know about and is looking forward for this next fall as we go through the rest of this. So Spencer, back to you.
All right, thank you panelists, and thanks for that pitch back, Kendra. So we have 5 topics we'll be discussing today as a group, and then we're gonna have an open forum session. Certainly if questions come to mind throughout our conversation, put them in the Q&A, we will get to them. and we're thrilled that you're here with us today. So our first topic, and this is related to something that Kendra was just talking about, is staff hiring. So let's talk about what are you experiencing when it comes to staff hiring? Are you able to fund positions, fill positions? Are processes slow, lots of applicants? What's it look like?
I'll jump in and say we've been fortunate to not have a lot of staff reductions over the course of the last year in our residential operations, particularly related to the Office of Residence Life. And so we've had some vacancies occur over the year that we've opted not to fill, that we will be trying to fill in this upcoming school year. We have not been given any directive to not proceed as normal related to fulfilling our positions. We are hoping for a pretty regular fall, and so we are hiring based on the assumption that we will be fully operational in the fall. We did notice a pretty significant dip in our resident assistant applications, and we think that this is sort of twofold. First, the timing of our RA applications. I think students were still not real sure what the university was going to be doing next fall, and so they were reluctant to have a commitment related to where they were going to live. I think that's part of it, and then I think because we let students out of their second year residency requirement last fall, I think there are some that are still sort of hoping for that. They didn't want to commit to our resident assistant position as rising second year students. Of course, that is not happening at Miami. We do intend to hold both our first and second year residency requirements in place for next year. So, but because of those numbers, we were able to get enough candidates. We are going to have about 250 RAs next year, but we don't have a strong enough alternate pool. And so we are actually running a summer process for our resident assistant alternate pool so that we are ready to fill those spaces. In terms of our full-time and graduate staff hiring, the confirms from our graduate assistants, they came in a lot slower than we're used to them coming in. I think we're still maybe 2 or 3 spots where we're still looking for graduate assistants. And then for our full-time staff, we have lots of team members that are looking for new opportunities, but it seems like processes at other schools are going really slowly. And so then our process is going really slowly. So that's what we're doing at Miami.
Well, and I'll share similar to Vika, we did see kind of a smaller RA pool this year as part of that process. We still have some alternates, but I would definitely echo it is not as strong as we would probably like to see that alternate pool to be, and may likely look to do something either this summer or this next fall, depending on how some things go. We've obviously have approval to fill our hall director positions and a senior administrative assistant position that's been vacant for a year. And our graduate assistantships are kind of going slowly. Our institution does have a hiring freeze in place. We've had one in place actually for several years. And so, but fortunately, because of who we are and what we do, we have always been able to receive approval to move forward with those processes throughout the year. So we're thankful for that. But it's definitely been a slightly different process for some of the staff hiring this year, just because of everything else that's going on.
One of the other things I've noticed, we have a fairly large group of graduates leaving our institution and going out into the field this year. And there's been a lot of hesitancy on their part about the process because they're not being invited to campuses. And so they're being provided with job offers sight unseen, and it's a very different experience for them. And so we've been trying to coach them through some of those things and talk about ways that they can learn more about the campus environment and maybe make some educated decisions within the context or the shadow of the pandemic. And that's been it's been a really interesting place to be as a mentor, to try and help young professionals make this next decision that they have to make. And in their world, we realize some of us have been around for a while, that this is the first step on their journey, but to them, it's right in front of them. And this is a big step in their life. And so it's a very anxiety-driven process for them, on top of the group that still haven't found jobs yet. So it's been an interesting place to be, to help coach some folks in making the final decision, and also try to build up others and help them network to continue their search, because many of us have had hiring chills and hiring freezes, which really delayed some of our posting processes nationally. And so a lot of us probably would already have our grad positions filled and would be very close to filling entry-level hall director type positions at this time of the year. And many of us are just getting those postings out for the full-time positions. And so it's a very unique situation to be in when the fiscal constraints we are under this year and unknown occupancy numbers for fall are really hampering our traditional abilities to do the job searching and filling, and then what would then transcend into our summer onboarding processes are probably going to be very much delayed this year.
Thank you so much for sharing those perspectives. And certainly as attendees, if you wish to share in the chat some of the experiences you're having on that topic, I think that'd be great for the good of the group. We have had a couple questions come into the Q&A that are related to our next topic, and that is summer plans and summer conferences. So if you're willing to share what you're experiencing in your campuses, are summer conferences happening, overnight guests, no overnight guests? That is our next topic. I'll throw it to our panel.
I could share a little bit about what's happening here in Washington, D.C. at American University. We have taken a very, I would say, again, conservative approach on health and safety. And we are not offering any camps and conferences except for one client. And this is one client that has worked with us for, I don't know, I want to say more than 15 years. And they have very specific guidelines and practices, and they are bringing a large number of staff, and they're going to be here throughout the summer. And so it was a conversation with, with planning and ensuring that all the different health and safety elements would be addressed. But really that is what that's what we did. Only one client, only one program for the whole summer. And then we're having our university students for summer housing, but at this moment it's a very small population, not different than what we do usually on a summer here in Washington, D.C., but still small, actually less than 100 students staying in our university housing. So very, very small, very limited operation for camps and conferences.
Similarly here, I'm in Los Angeles County, which has probably been one of the most conservative counties in the country. So we're only able to house housing insecure students and students in essential workforce positions. So our summer housing, it looks like last week we received some guidance on summer housing. So we're starting those conversations on how we potentially will be able to expand some of our summer housing opportunities for students who are ready to come back to campus. And also our campus events is reviewing what conferences might look like as we determine which campuses we're going to utilize for the summer. And that's where we're at right now. We haven't received any full guidance for the summer, but we're in planning.
Go ahead.
Kendra.
Okay, sorry. So we are doing some camps and conferences. We did a few last summer. They mostly were internal camps that we ended up doing. Most of the external camps just made the decision at some point to cancel. So we did do a few internal camps. And this summer we're looking to expand that a little bit more. We currently have a couple of cheer camps that are still on the books, not as many as we normally would. And we have a number of athletic and other internal camps. We're working with each of the camps to identify how they want to do their housing. We're offering double occupancy rooms right now. And so that is an option for people this summer, but we can also accommodate singles if they'd like to have that. So we're in what we're considering kind of almost normal operations, just less than. With regards to camps, and then working with them to ensure that whatever policies and practices that the campus has in place at that point with regards to masking, social distancing, and everything, that they're aware of that as well, and can work with them to ensure that that those safeguards are maintained for them while they're on campus.
I was just going to share briefly that 3 weeks ago, we did an assessment, and with no overnight orientation going on and our reservations going out the door, we were down to maybe 10% of our normal requests for summer camps and conferences. And so we sent them a document 3 weeks ago saying that if they wanted overnight congregate living, they were going to have to provide vaccination records or gateway testing results for all participants that wanted to stay in our halls and go through our dining centers. And then we were going to wait and see how many of them were actually going to follow through on these commitments. And then we would determine the kind of occupancy we could provide. So if we ended up with only one group of 100 people, that was the only group we were going to have for 3 weeks, we'd probably put them all in single rooms. And this goes against every grain of my being for the last, 25 years. But this summer, I'm almost at a place where I'd rather not have any groups and let my staff have a respite and have about a 60 to 70 day relaxed summer after the last 14 months they've just gone through. That I just don't think the minimal amount of money that we're going to be able to make this summer under these extraordinary circumstances is probably not as valuable in the long run as watching my staff come back recharged and ready to hit the ground in August with a completely different set of parameters to work with. So I'm glad you're recording this, because a year ago I'll be on a money grab for summer camps and conferences, but this year I'm about ready to just say, let's just pull the plug on the whole thing and honor our staff for the year they've had.
I'll be sure to get you the link.
That's so funny. We are for lack of a different word, bifurcated is the word we normally use, but we're really much more split up than that at Miami. So we have a special staff specifically for conferences at Miami, and they have been given no direction to alter their normal conference planning. And so if there are groups interested in coming to Oxford, Ohio and participating in camps and conferences, we're going to do what we can to accommodate them. We actually have the privilege of hosting our boys state conference. And so we expect a smaller boys state, for a Buckeye boys state is what it's called in Ohio. And we expect a smaller participant number, but we are planning to host that pretty large conference on our campus in early June. And then there was a question about in-person orientation. So we're not having in-person orientation at Miami, but we are looking to do what we're calling Miami Bound programming, which typically is programming that is pre-semester programming that happens right before the beginning of the school year in August, but we're actually looking to create some experiences for students sort of midsummer. So we are, until otherwise noted, we are trying to manage our conference programs like we have managed our residential system this year. And yes, we'll grab all the money. We will.
And on a brief side note, this is the basketball coach in me. I can tell you that recently the NCAA did announce that they were ending their dead period of recruitment starting June 1st. So you may start to see some athletics reach out, if you're a Division I school, as they may be trying to do camps on campus after June 1st to try to get some of those athletes in, or those young athletes in. So something for your radar. But let's move on to our next topic, staff training plans. I'm going to get the slide to go. There we go. So staff training plans, as Dan brought up earlier, trying to get a staff to recharge and then get ready to hit the ground come this fall. But what does staff training look like for your staffs moving forward? Shortened, virtual, in person, hybrid?
I'll jump in and say we're going to be looking at mostly hybrid. And I think that has less to do with comfort and more to do with the parameters just continue to shift. And so we don't want to plan an all in person and then not be able to do that. And we don't want to plan a completely virtual and miss out on the opportunity to do in person. And so we're looking at a hybrid model. What was really interesting to me in talking to our resident assistants, who of course this year had a completely virtual RA training, and I was thinking that they would like that, right? Like, oh, you could stay home a little bit longer, and they were like, no, we miss being together. We miss the RA community together. So I know that we'll be looking at ways to bring them together a bit more than we did last summer.
So
We're going to do,
go ahead, Michelle.
forward. So we're gonna try to do more face-to-face. We did virtual this last year for hall director training as much as we could with our campus partners. And we really feel like we've lost out on a lot of relationship building because of that. And so we're going to try to do more face-to-face as we can. We have had a summer training for RAs for a lot of years now. So that was great and will obviously continue. But we're hoping that once we bring those RAs back in August, that we'll be able to do a little bit more face-to-face with them. And obviously, that will be at the presenter's comfort level. So we know we're going to try to be flexible and need to be flexible with those individuals who might not feel comfortable coming into a space with all the RAs there. And so working through some of that, but the goal would be to try to do a little bit more face-to-face so that we do have that relationship building and that team bonding that we want to see happening with all those various groups.
So for us, since our recruitment timeline moved a little later than we had anticipated, we're actually concurrently doing a CA seminar as part of our recruitment process. So going over the ACUHO-I RA 101 modules with our candidates, so they get a sense of what the experience is. It's all pending what the county provides us. We don't have a timeline as to when we'll know if we'll be able to bring more students in the fall. So in our timeline is that we'll let them know in July if they've been selected as a CA and if they will be invited to come to campus as part of our training, identifying that we may not be able to come back to campus and still want to have some engagement with our residents or prospective residents in a virtual manner that we weren't able to provide this year. So planning for, we might have to make some changes or we might be able to bring you on campus and we'll start in August and welcome your residents mid-August and ready to go for the fall.
I'm not heavily engaged in the day-to-day planning for what our community advisor training is going to look like in August. But one of the things I've charged the group to think about was to try and utilize some of the academic spaces and use them as a trial run for staff to go in and do some face-to-face training, because we're committed to going to maybe 70 to 80 face-to-face classes in the fall. And I saw this as an opportunity to partner with our building services staff as well as the provost office and be able to show and model how we can do this safely and maybe try to create some sense of confidence for incoming students and families to see that this is going to work and this is how it's going to be managed. And selfishly, there's probably a little bit of a push there to get the faculty to understand that this can be done in a safe environment, and you don't have to, your hybrid doesn't have to be completely online and you only come to campus one day out of the month or something. Because I think that sense of engagement, we know already that was what was missing this year, and it had a huge, shadow over retention and student success. I want to try and capitalize on the opportunity when I've got 100 some odd people here a few weeks ahead of time to figure out how we can do this and show it and model it so that everybody comes in August and can see that this can work if we follow the right parameters. So it's kind of a selfish way of meeting our needs within the department, but maybe trying to partner with the rest of the campus on this.
All right, thanks for sharing, everyone. We are going to move to very related fall opening plans, a topic that I know many of you are hoping that we can discuss in great length. So I'd love to hear what are you all working on in terms of fall openings, staggered openings, late openings? What are your situations?
As I was starting to say in the beginning about what's happening in our campus now, is we are starting the planning, because really when I say starting the plan, we've been planning, but we're still, I feel like we're still in the starting phase. With a concept that is still going to be a long move-in process. We're talking about a 2-week move-in process. What we may end up doing, depending on how the health and safety condition improves, is increasing the number of available time slots on specific days, and getting them to be more people closer to the start of classes to make it easier for us to be able to support those students with more availability of staff on campus and more programming, more efforts. Because, you know, a 2-week move-in effort or 10-day move-in effort takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of resources, funding. And so we are trying to balance those in observing the health and safety situation of the district and where students are coming from. We have definitely agreed on that is going to be a very centralized process, in the sense of, can we, as opposed to having multiple stations as we've had in the past, a very spread out process, can we make it shorter and faster and use as much technology as we can to make that check-in process, those different steps that students have to go through, reduced. You know, we were used to having almost like a carnival on our campus for moving, a very engaged, a very social process in the past, when we had 4,300 students and moving in, which is our capacity. We are bringing those same students, but we now have to, utilize as much as we can of the latest tech and processes to make it as easy as possible and as touchless as possible. And then the last piece, one of the things that we have done that has helped us in the past, and it's going to be a challenge this year, is that in the past we used to hire a move-in company to help us move student items out of their vehicles and get items into students' rooms, something that actually has helped our campus so much, because if you know about American University's campus, it's a very small footprint, only 2 roads to get to campus, and most of the students live within 2 different building complexes. And so that added logistics have helped us. And so we're not using that system this year because of this spread out concept. So we're still working out the logistics that have added to us, but the changing health and safety considerations are making us take a pause and a slower approach, which has its drawbacks, and families and students keep asking all the questions every day. When are you going to release the assignments and the move-in time slot? So lots of logistics and still planning to get clarified.
I would echo that we're still in the very early planning stages of our fall opening. I will say, though, as we communicate to incoming families move-in day, we are communicating our traditional first-year move-in day. Not a week of move-in, not multiple days of move-in. We are communicating, the sort of the Thursday before classes start. Now, as we all know, we all lived through last year, that could very well change. But so I always respond to parents to say, well, as of today, this is the first year move-in date. So we will see what move-in testing looks like. We did that both in the fall and in the spring semester. So we'll see, of course, with vaccinations happening right now, we are a vaccination spot. So we have lots of students getting vaccinated, lots of faculty and staff getting vaccinated. We may not see testing in the fall. I know that some schools are planning on doing continuous testing in the fall. And at this point, Miami has made the decision that we're not going to even continue our traditional testing program in the same way that we're doing it this year in the fall. There was a question about requiring resident vaccinations for residents. And so in the state of Ohio, we're not allowed to require vaccinations, COVID-19 vaccination for the general student population. I do know that there's at least one Ohio public that is planning on requiring it for vaccinations. Miami is not planning on requiring the COVID-19 vaccination for our students. We are, though, we are requiring a reporting of if you have it or if you don't. So you don't have to have it, but we want to know your status so that we are aware as a campus community.
So, so I'll say this last fall we did a RSVP reservation time scheduling for the first time, which was really great, and it's something that we want to keep. We did an extended move-in, which for the campus felt like an extended move-in, but for us, we know it was just move-in, and it was just a formalized process for all of our returners who haven't normally had one in the past. And so instead of, we still had the 1 day for first year students, but we formalized the entire process for everyone else. We're in the process right now of trying to determining what we're going to do for this next fall. The RSVP and the reservation process are absolutely going to stay. So we're still thinking we're going to have a kind of a more formalized process. We've always had a centralized check-in process at one location for key distribution, and we're actually considering a decentralized process to take it back out to all the halls so that we can create excitement about moving into each one of the halls instead of excitement about coming to the recreation center. So, so that's one of the things we're looking at. We have a hurdle in terms of a lot of people who've done it the old way that we have to convince that this is the way to go. And so we're trying to work through what some of that looks like. We've always had volunteers as part of our other process and usually had 1,000 students come back. We obviously did not use volunteers this last year. And we're trying to create a process that doesn't use volunteers and maybe makes more carts and things available to families so that they can have the help to get moved in on their own and make that go a little bit faster. But there's still a lot of planning, I think, that has to go into place. We are, I think, for our first year students, looking at probably a 2-day move-in instead of just a 1 day. We struggled this last year getting them all in with all of our COVID restrictions and everything, and we had long waits, and so we want to avoid that this next year. So looking to kind of expand that, but I think we'll still be looking at a formal process of about 8 days just for everyone, for those returning students and those new students prior to the semester.
So one of the things that I liked about what we did last year was having the scheduled move in like many of you guys did. And so we're going to continue that forever because that is just, it removes the chaos from the experience. And even though it elongates the days, it's a much more manageable, and I think it's a better first impression for us. And I also saw the question in there about volunteers. And so we're soliciting individuals that want to volunteer to help out with our process. And our plan is to ask folks if they've been fully vaccinated and then try to figure out roles for people to help the process so that we mitigate risk, but we can, there are contactless volunteers that are needed to direct traffic, and there are folks that may need to pick up luggage and carts and things like that. So we're trying to figure out a way where we can use and capitalize on folks that are vaccinated, and maybe we'll agree to take a surveillance test a day or two before we ask them to volunteer for a few hours. So we're thinking through some of these things because those are exciting days for our entire campus. And it's a nice morale boost to see if we can get people out of their offices and back engaged with that process so that the whole campus has a moment to try to be a part of something that's revigorating, because we missed so many touch points this last year. I'm trying to look for opportunities to get folks that work from home back on campus for 1 day and be a part of something that they can celebrate.
I agree. I think everything's changed with scheduled move-ins. We're never going back. It's going to be planned out for the rest of the time. What a COVID revelation.
And there's a revenue opportunity here, folks. Okay, so if you want to have preferred move-in times, then you have an upcharge for that, just like you would a single room. So we have to think this thing through.
Could you get those move-in times sponsored though? This move-in time sponsored by dorm movers. No. All right. Let's take a look at our last formal topic that we had for the group, and that was testing and vaccine requirements for residents. I know we touched on this a bit with our plans for a move-in. Are there any other updates to vaccine or testing requirements that you'd all be able to share with the group?
So we averaged maybe 35 to 25 residents this past year. So we had a very small population, and we were doing pool testing once a month. We in hoping that we'll be able to expand our housing opportunities, we're looking at either 2 times weekly testing, considering oral or nasal, and also reviewing our current vaccination protocols. We have not determined if we're going to require the vaccine, but that's currently being determined by senior cabinet to identify what that will look like for at least our residents, and if not, the other greater student population.
I just want to add that I mentioned that we're not allowed to require the vaccine in the state of Ohio right now for the student body as a whole, and that's because it's experimental. So I don't know what the result will be once it's like a permanent vaccine, but because it's still under sort of experimental coverage is why that is the current approach in Ohio.
So we only tested students who were symptomatic during the course of the year. We did no reentry testing or anything in the fall or the spring for the students. So there is absolutely no plan here to begin any testing at this point, unless something could change next week. But there's no plans to do any testing of our residential students or at this point asking them to share whether they have or have not been vaccinated. So I think the hope is here that we will just continue what we've been doing this year and continue to keep our fingers crossed, even though we know that there are institutions who have indicated that we should be doing other things. But I know that there are differences around the state of Missouri as well in terms of what some of the schools are doing. But we have chosen not to do any of the surveillance testing throughout the course of the year. And that will likely continue into next year as well.
We have already announced that we will be requiring students to be vaccinated if they are living on campus or if they are in person, taking classes in person, if they're living off campus. So they are required, and that will be part of their immunization requirements, which of course, they already do that with the Student Health Center, so that will be added to that. But we announced that last week. And our testing concepts are still, I think, to be confirmed. Right now, the students who are living with us on campus are required to test weekly, and we have a testing service available that it's free for students. So I just don't know exactly yet what is going to look like in the fall. I imagine that there's probably some adaptation to that model.
I'm going to share that I am, and most of the people on the panel today are engaged in a task force that we've been asked to go back and work on some of the reentry conversations for all of us next fall. And this is one of the topic areas that I think we're going to drill down on and try to prepare for the membership some best advice. And we're going to try to look at some of these things through the lens of your region, because we realize that a lot of things related to the COVID pandemic became politicized, and regionally different places were confined by local and state health officials in terms of what you could and could not do. So we're going to try and see if we can throw a net around this in the coming weeks and put out some information for the membership. So we appreciate if you want to throw some ideas or some questions that you have into the chat. I can make sure that those things get into our conversations over the next couple of weeks, and we're trying to address the things that you're worried about, either at your campus or things that you're hearing around your state or with your particular peer group as it comes to vaccination and testing requirements. And then the other part I would also encourage you to be thinking about with regard to the vaccinations is that there's a lot of unknowns that are going on right now. And so they don't even know how long these vaccinations are going to be legitimate. And so we may be back into an entire campus vaccination routine, 6 months from now, where we need to be thinking through how do we get all of our campus populations vaccinated for the return home for the Thanksgiving or the Christmas holiday. And we also don't know how effective the vaccines are going to be with the variant strains that are out there right now. So I would encourage folks to be asking a lot of elongated questions about the what ifs after August, and get those conversations happening on your campus so that you can be prepared to look at the options and look at your academic schedule and think those things through about how would you plan, or how would you manage something that became a mass vaccination effort for your campus population around all of your other routine type of things that you would be doing as you started inching closer to your closing processes.
Incredibly well said, and thanks for sharing those future resources that are coming, Dan. It's great to share with the group, and we certainly want to keep this group connected and making sure we're finding out the information that's going to be most helpful moving forward. I'm going to go to our open forum part of the process. We've had a number of items come in the Q&A. Shane Peters with sharing news about what the Chauvin verdict's going to be announced at 4:30 Eastern, so I'll be in front of a TV in 40 minutes. Other items that are in on the Q&A, Vika, you're so kind that you'd like to answer that question live.
Sure, I'll answer that question. So there's a question from Rick about for those requiring students to be vaccinated on campus, what exemptions, if any, are you allowing? And so we always, not as a school that is requiring that, but we always have exceptions and exemptions for vaccination. So I would imagine the similar procedures would be followed. I think, Chris, you mentioned that American's going to be requiring. If you want to, I'll popcorn to you on that.
Yeah, we are still, I think in the piece of, are we going to be doing vaccination on campus, or are we going to be administering? At this moment, we don't believe that we will be administering on campus. DC and the DMV region has a really extensive network of places to administer vaccines. And so far we haven't heard that we'll be administering on campus, but that could also change as, I think as time goes by. Really the piece that we've agreed on and has been publicized to our students is that it'll be a requirement, and it'll be part of the immunization process that already exists. It'll be an addition to that. And there will be exceptions that they can apply for, religious, medical, and other exceptions.
Thank you, Vika and Chris. And I think that really covers what we've seen in the Q&A, and I also recognize that we are getting to the end of our time together today. So I just wanted to allow each panelist just a last goodbye and some parting thoughts that you each want to share with the group as we wrap up our session today. And I'm happy to start with any panelist that would like to wrap us up on that topic, and we'll go around and have each person share.
I'll go first, get it over with. Thank you, Spencer, for making this happen today, and thanks to the panelists. This is always great to see everybody and get together and share thoughts. So I hope people that were listening to us found some value in the conversation. One thing that we didn't talk about when it comes to reentry and vaccinations is our international students and our international scholars. And so if you haven't reached out to your campus partners in that particular conversation, I think sooner is always better when it comes to that, because of the complexity of the travel arrangements for your folks that are recruiting and admitting in your international students, and anything you can do to smoothen their onboarding process and maybe do some things, break the paradigm shift, and maybe do something different in the housing world where you can create a safe quarantine space so that they can safely re-enter your campus might pay dividends for you in terms of collaborations across your campus in the long run. So it's April 20th. Now's a good time to get out in front of something like that. So just food for thought.
I want to encourage the folks on this call and subsequently listening to this video to really be critical about, to use critical thinking about how we're approaching student life and student engagement in the context of this experience. Even through this call, there are some things where like, I was just like, that doesn't actually make sense to do it that way, given the other things. So this idea, I really think we got to challenge sort of like, if we can have students in a classroom, why can't we have students in this space? Or if we can have students in our residence halls in double occupancy, why can't we do this? And so and there, of course, we have a wide spectrum of schools represented on this call. Some schools are like, what pandemic? And some schools are like, oh my gosh, it's still March. And it's not still March 2020. And I think we, in some ways, have to push our institutions to recognize and realize that. So I just encourage folks to not be afraid to be critically thinking about what makes sense. And what do we know that we didn't know a year ago, and how does that impact what we do?
And if I can pull on that, Vika, of what makes sense, I'm really, really worried about staff retention, professional staff retention. There's so much that we've learned about how we can make our work better, faster, how we can access more students using technology. And we can't miss that as we go into this fall semester. Our staff has done different work with using technology to become more efficient. And if you live in a place like I do, that staff drives or takes the metro for 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get to work, and they're not getting paid market level rates, we have to be flexible if we want to maintain good staff that we've trained for years. And so we have to ask that question that Vicky was saying, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this? Is this related to our core value, and also to how we want to deliver this work? What is the best way to do this? So let's improve and leapfrog, not just come back to the way that we used to do things in the past.
And I guess I'll jump from that. That's one of the things that I've been talking with my staff about is we have an opportunity right now, even though it feels like here at my institution, it's been pandemic we have this chance to reimagine the work that we do. And why not take this? So if we can critically evaluate our processes and procedures and how we interact and what we're doing, now's the time to do it. So just because we've been doing something for 20 plus years, let's take a look at this and let's kind of, decide maybe this really isn't meeting the needs of our students now anymore. We just thought it always did. And I guess I will also say there are obviously a lot of us who have been open more normal than others campuses. And so for those of you who have not, please reach out to us. We are a resource for you and can help you, to answer maybe some questions. While it might not work exactly regionally, we have been through some things because we've been open and have had students on our campuses and can tell you some of the hurdles, pitfalls that we ran into this year. And so know that you're not out there, answering these questions alone, because we've been there, and we can maybe tell you what to avoid as you're going through some of that. So don't hesitate to reach out to your colleagues around the nation or regionally, who can help you to answer some of these questions that are still looming for so many of you.
And I think how everyone has shared, continue the conversation beyond this panel, beyond this time right now. Most of us have been really good about connecting with our networks. I attest to the level of directors here in the state of California and Los Angeles County that has been really important and crucial for the work that we do. And I think the last few words I can say is, navigate this with care and respect for yourself, for your students, and for your residents coming in.
And with that, I'd like to say thank you again to our panel for joining us today and sharing your insights. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. And if you're listening to this recording, thanks for taking the time to get all the way to the end of the recording. You can see on our screen a list of upcoming virtual offerings from ACUHO-I. That's the rest of our virtual roundtable schedule for April. And certainly as you sign off, if you'd like to share any thank yous with our panel before you leave, that's great, or leave your contact information. Wishing you all the best this week, and as we get closer and closer to moving toward May and getting the summer, we're all in this together. So thanks again for your time today. Have a great one, everyone.